Okay, I believe it's recording. Yeah. So, thank you, Mike, for giving me your precious time. Uh, just for the sake of the introduction, today, hi YouTube family. Today I am with my friend Mike, and Mike and I have known each other for around like 1 or 1.5 year through Instagram. Back then, we both were really newbies, developers, and just today is about celebrating Mike's journey because lots of people they start developing and they leave like midway, or obviously it's a challenging industry and the technologies are changing, so it's a difficult thing to keep up with the pace. And also when somebody is like in mid 30s or early 30s and making a career shift, and so it's all about like the celebration that Mike has like really done it and like completed the coding, self-taught developer, and also landed the job. So and in this community, I think the reason Mike I wanted to do this is that like we should, because I have gone through that self-taught learning path, and I'm still going through. So here we need people to like appreciate even a little bit, even if you have solved one bug. So yeah, Mike is like Mike is writing code in Swift mainly, and also he's learning some other languages, as I saw from his Instagram, like Kotlin, and also learning some databases. So we would get into more randomized questions in no particular order because obviously
Sure.
I'm no interviewer. But I'm very excited to see Mike, and now Mike can, if you would like to say something, like, yeah.
Sure. My name is Mike Camp. I'm 31 years old, and I was a propane delivery driver for a very long time. I worked in the oil industry for 10 years and made a career switch. I guess I started about a little over about a year and a half ago is when I first started all of this. And it's been a long journey. There's been a lot to it. It's in a way I feel like it's happening to me more than it's something I'm doing myself. It's easy to feel a little bit out of control, along for the ride, but in a good way.
Okay,
Uh,
Mike. That's
and I'm currently working for a company called Innovative Software Solutions in Charlottesville, Virginia. Um, it's my first job in tech, and it's so far going really good.
so, Mike. Like how long did it take you from like starting the programming and then like landing an actual job?
I would say about 9 months. I guess for about six of it, I was doing very focused, well, as focused as one can be all on his own, really focused learning with some Udemy courses, studying stuff, just finding it online and looking over, how stuff works, and YouTube as well. That those were my primary learning tools. But it took about 9 months from the time I quit my job uh, till I got a job all on my own.
But like, isn't it amazing? Because I had like spent 1.5 year, uh, maybe because like I was focusing on like different things, or because I was like doing Java and also doing Flutter, and then kind of at the very end I started to get into JavaScript, but it was still, or maybe it was like something to do with my visa situation, or a foreigner in another country, like that I was in Thailand. But even after 1.5 year, it was kind of challenging for me to land a job. So I'm wondering, like in 9 months, how did you like stay focused on like the learning part of it? That like, yeah, I'm learning enough that after 9 months, when I land a job, it is going to help me.
Um, Staying focused, that was difficult because for me, it was early February, the very start of February in 2021 that I quit the job that I had. It was a fairly well paying job. It wasn't great, but it was getting the bills paid. My wife was working as well, and we had saved up enough money so that I could quit, um, and we could use that money on top of what my wife was still making to be able to, have all the bills paid. And I was able to focus all of my time on learning. Um, but I guess to fit all of that in 9 months, um, I did my best to not spread my focus between different languages. Um, I guess it was early on. It was difficult to pick a language, because there are a ton of languages out there. They all have their shiny parts, and then there's the ugly part where it's, oh, who's hiring for that job? It feels like nobody's hiring for what you want to learn sometimes. So I guess focusing on a single language helped me a lot because I was able to, um, I guess, get the most out of that language that I could, um, and then be able to use the foundation of that language to help when it came to getting a job, because it's actually pretty easy to pick up a second language once you've got one down, because they're all based on the fundamentals of computer logic. If and or, if it's an object-oriented programming language, it's going to have the same fundamentals. So getting a fundamental understanding of it can go a long way towards your second language. And working to stay focused on that, it was in one hand, on one side, it was pretty easy to stay focused because it's like, oh, got to I've got to
Got it.
sorry about that. uh you've got to get to where you're going. When you have a family depending on you, it's like, well, I don't have a choice. Like, maybe I don't want to do programming today. Maybe I want to take a day off. Well, I don't have that choice. I've got a family. I've got a wife. It was about 2 or 3 months into studying that uh, we found out we were expecting our first baby. And then it's like, okay, well, now I've got a baby on the way. I've absolutely got to get a job. And near the end, it kind of felt like, well, if I don't get a job, if I can't find one, I'm going to have to go back and do something else, deliver pizzas or whatever. So I guess having family and money that needed to come in helped keep me focused there.
Great. So, like going back to Swift, like, is it like because the Apple or like Apple and Mac and like iPhone, they are more popular in America? That is why you kind of gravitated towards Swift, or like why you like did not go for like some other languages?
I went with Swift because that's where my passion was. That's what I wanted to do. I honestly looked up which languages were most popular. What was the easiest language to learn to get a job, and honestly, Java and Python and Ruby came up, and those were very much at the top of the list for. You can search for it. You can search what's the most popular, or the best language to get a job with right now, and those are always going to be at the top. So that's honestly a great language to pick up. All of those are, but I picked Swift because I wanted to make an iPhone app. I enjoy Apple products. I like Mac. I like iPhones. I'm recording this on an iPad right now. I like Apple stuff, and I wanted to make something that would work on my phone. I wanted to be able to put an app on the phone that I had in my hand. So I went with Swift. It was always lower on those lists. Swift was never the top language. But I decided that if I went to learn Java, I don't know what Java does at the time. Like, I don't know why you would need Java. I don't know where it goes. I had no desire to make a website. So I went with Swift because that was what I needed to make what I wanted to make. And I think that went a long ways towards keeping a focus on it because it's what I wanted, you know?
So beautifully put. Like, yeah, I think one really like you started with a very simple idea that like I need a phone, I need an app on my phone, and like yeah,
Mhm.
that's how you work. And obviously back then when I started, like I had iPhone, but I also had Android. But obviously, like once like you are going into this industry, everybody really Googles and sees. But Android's market share is like much like higher, like bigger than the iPhone. But obviously, iPhone is like a niche market where like the people who are buying iPhone for the last 10 years are going to buy iPhone for the next 10 years, no matter what. So
Yeah. Hmm.
okay, great. So how many hours did you spend each day? Yeah, what was your day like for the past 9 months? Did you miss any weddings? Did you miss any events?
I pretty much stuck to just your classic working hours. My wife was working at the time, so I would, obviously we would get up at the same time. I would usually try to do a little bit around the house, just make sure it's all in good shape. And then about 8:30 usually in the morning, I would um, get into coding, and I would work till noon, and then take a little bit of a break, and then from like 1 to 5 or whenever my wife got home was about as long as I would work. So I was putting in about 8 to 10 hours a day, depending on the day. Um, just doing as much as I could, learning through the different courses I had. So about 40 hours a week, honestly, is about what I was putting in. And um, yeah, that was about 9 months of that. I didn't miss any weddings or anything like that. We definitely focused our budget down. We started living a little bit tighter, but we both knew that it was it was going to be a sacrifice now, but being able to change industries and get into something that's a little more profitable, and honestly something that I enjoyed doing more, was going to be worth it in the long run. If at the time, if I was going to be able to get a job at all.
Wow, that's great. Mike, like, okay, my next question would be, what advice would you give to somebody who's just starting and like thinking like you that, oh, I could also like, be a software developer. Yeah.
Uh, First of all, you can. Um, I've heard a lot of people say like, oh, like I can't do it. I don't understand computers. I don't understand computers. It's not about understanding computers. It's about being able to work with logic. If this, then that, and or like it's all based on that. Now, there's more complicated things to it, but I I didn't get that. I didn't get the more complicated stuff right away. There's still a ton of stuff that I don't understand. You don't have to know it all. And anybody that wants to can learn these things. It's just going to take the time it takes to learn it. And if you don't want to learn it, I don't recommend you do. There's a lot of people out there that are like, oh, I'm going into computer programming because that's where the money's at. Um, if you don't want to learn programming, don't. If you don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer, don't be a doctor or a lawyer. And if you don't want to do it, don't put yourself through forcing yourself to learn it just for someone else's gratification, or just because that's where you think you can make more money. I,
Great.
I would also say don't expect to have to buy the most expensive equipment. You don't need $3,000 worth of laptop to learn coding. You can learn how to code on a $400 or $500 machine. The MacBook that I learned on, I had bought in 2015, and it was a 2012 model. I bought a pretty specced up 3-year-old computer at the time. I probably paid too much for it, but by the time I got to into coding, it was, you know, it was a very old machine. Yeah, it was pushing 10 years, and right now I still have it. it's a good machine, but I can't even get the latest Mac updates on it. And I don't need those updates on it. It's just barely hanging on, but it still does its job. You don't need a bunch of equipment. You can get by on significantly less than what you see other people using on their Instagram accounts. You
Yeah.
see the fancy setups. You don't need the fancy setups. And if you pay attention to what you want to learn, you can find courses online at very, very cheap rates. I bought, I think, 3 or 4 courses from udemy.com. I don't think I paid more than $15 for a single one.
Wow,
And
man.
the 2 of them that I used the most, I probably spent 2 or 3 months a piece on. There was just a ton of information there. And you can find a ton on YouTube. I'm sure you know that. You can find just about anything on YouTube. You can find stuff like for Swift, I highly recommend Hacking with Swift and Swift by Sundell. Those are both really good websites where you can learn Swift from. You don't have to go out to a boot camp and spend $25,000 to learn what's free on YouTube. You just don't have to.
Wow. Beautifully put there. Actually, I wanted to go back to the Instagram thing because so the developers like starters like me who are like the people that I follow or the people like whoever is getting into this industry are following, they are like they have like around 1400, 1500 followers and they're like so good at it, and obviously like they're putting this new equipment and like yeah, so like how does like social media because someday people are even like the newbies who are like doing nothing, right? Like it's like how do I say, so like the app that I make or like it's a small progress obviously, but it's not like a big deal. So is it like how do you like keep up with social media, because your social media is like just 30 to 50 posts and like you landed a job and like somebody like who is like having like 300, 400 posts and they are just there for like the aesthetics of it, but like
Mhm.
not landing a job or something. Like how do you like, do you think it's important to keep up with the social media? Like how do you feel about that?
I would say yes and no. If you're using social media to get a job, I personally wouldn't recommend that. Some people have got a job because of social media. I'm not going to downplay that, but I never used it that way. I use social media because I wanted to record, I guess, the steps, the little victories that I had. I wanted to save those moments, and I posted stuff about how when I first figured out a specific optional kind of thing with variables in Swift, and it's like that's pretty low level. That's not very that's not a big accomplishment. That's kind of fundamental to programming. But I recorded that, and it's like, oh, I finally figured this thing out, and I put it on social media. There were a couple of times where I was like following along with like a tutorial on how to build a simple app, and I figured it out and I built it, and it's like, hey, I was following a tutorial. It's not originally mine, but I made this works. And I was the one that I pinned every letter in the code. So I would share that stuff because I wanted to remember it. I wanted to be able to go back and be like, oh, I remember doing that. It's funny now, but that was a high point. That was a great day that week, and I remember that, and it's good to remember that. I met you on Instagram. If I
Yeah.
didn't have my coding account, I never would have met you. So I have friends now on Instagram, but if I was going to Instagram because I needed the likes, I needed to feel fulfilled because somebody liked my post. I feel like I would fail pretty miserably there because not everybody has, the aesthetic office. They don't all have LED lights on everything. My keyboard doesn't glow, and that's okay. But I don't need it to, and I don't need someone to say that they like my office. I like my office. I don't need anybody else to tell me.
This should be a
um,
hashtag. I'm sorry to interrupt. My keyboard doesn't glow.
so it's a great tool to learn things from. I followed some accounts that would post little code snippets and like, oh, this is how you do just this little thing, and it's like, okay, I learned from that. But if you're going to social media because that's how you feel good about what you're doing, then you're probably not doing it right. That's
Wow.
my opinion on it.
Uh,
But it's a great place to meet other people doing what you're doing too.
Wow, as we speak, like I'm thinking of my own journey because obviously a self-taught developer can only relate to another similar person. So I think like
Yeah.
what I was doing that I was like extensively learning like 10 to 12 hours, and also like it kind of gave me fulfillment obviously, but on Sundays it was my day to prepare that tutorial for YouTube. So
Hmm.
it kind of became like I have to do this, and like like I wasn't enjoying it because oh I have to like I would beat myself that like okay, if I'm not uploading a tutorial I'm not doing a good job. And then the second thing and very important thing about the social media is like yeah, I mean like I used to like after like you have like done the programming for 10 to 12 hours and let's say you have had a good day and you have cracked it, but then having to create that post was like I had to put like a lot of thought into it, and like it was so
Yeah.
annoying to like edit the video and like make a canvas and put it out there. But now like when you speak it's kind of really enlightening me that like yeah, I mean yes, I'm not going against who do it, but I think this was probably the reason that I had a burnout in last uh, June and I didn't go back to it. And I think this is a very good point that you have put there. So I would ask one more question about uh,
Sure.
the courses, although you have already named those courses. So yeah, what are the courses like if you could like just say, or you would say that are they worth it on the Udemy? So one has to go to Udemy or one can just directly go to the YouTube.
Um, it helped me to have an organized video course because I recognized
Yeah.
kind of early on that I learn well when I'm watching someone else do it on a video. Some people learn through audio, some people learn through reading. I worked with a guy for a little bit um, who would read the technical manuals. Like he would go through just like every line of, the documentation on the code. And that's how he would learn. He would learn through picking up the book about C sharp. He went through a class on SQL, and he basically ignored all of the classes and read the books because that's how he learned. Well, I recognize that I learn better when I'm watching a video of someone do it and I can follow along with them. So it's more about how you learn best than it is find the cheap course on Udemy. I found some courses on purpose that were as long as possible. One of them had like 400 or 500 hours of video just on tutorials. It was like 20 different apps, and they were all small, but each one was a step harder. It covered a new concept, so it was constantly building on itself, and that went a long way towards me understanding a lot of the concepts of
Wow.
how Swift worked and what I wanted to get from it. But you don't have to go through Udemy. You can find a lot of things on YouTube. You can find a lot of stuff on, Stack Overflow, and just Google searching for what your problem is if you're working on something on your own. But You don't have to do it the way I did it. I would say it's probably more about figuring out how you like to learn and finding the best way to do that. It just depends on the person. It's definitely not follow the way I did it or you'll never have a job.
uh,
I can't claim that.
like, great, man. Like, that's great. I would say, like, how did you like keep up with the technologies? I would like to share a little bit about myself here. Uh, like, when I started learning programming, so I took a course from Udacity, who are partners with Google. So they are even one step ahead. Than obviously Udemy is like a more cheaper and more accessible. So that is why like their content is really like updated one. But like I came across this course like Udacity, and the Google employees, they are the instructors uh, in the like website or whatever. So what they did is like I downloaded their nano degree course. It's around like, yeah, $2,000, but obviously I found it somehow free. So,
Mhm.
but the content was really outdated, and I had no idea. So
Oh,
I kind of spent like 5 months on that, and I know that you are learning SQL right now, but so in Android they use like structured query language light, like SQL Lite. So it's
mhm.
like a little bit of a step down, but the basic is the same. There is a table, and there is like you are making
Right.
columns and all that.
Uh-huh.
And like in 4 months I was so dedicated that I used that, and like I created apps and I started developing, and I made like difficult apps like the database on your phone. But then I went to this meetup because Bangkok is an international city, and over there like there was a meetup of the JavaScript developers, and they were just doing something with the crypto. And over there, I'm going to everybody and asking, "Are you an Android developer? Are you an Android developer?" And there was one Russian guy. He was like, messing with me, and he said to me, "Hope dies last." That you are not meeting Android developer today. But anyways, I met an Android developer there, and I showed him like proudly that hey, see, I was working in my room, and I kind of like came up with this all 4 month effort. And he said, "This is all outdated," and my heart just tanked.
Oh man.
So
Wow.
then he showed like this the architecture that you and me were talking about, the MVVM. uh, and then he showed me a course on Udemy, and then I was heartbroken, but I went home, and I like in like 1 or like 2 months I finished that course. And that course is really like Google, in 2018 they updated, like they stopped using SQLite, and now they use Room database, and they started some new architecture, and also like they made the code really robust. So this is what I'm trying to say. But obviously learning something like like I had it like the hardest way, and then like to reduce it, because in SQLite the code is like really long, like 700 lines, 900 lines. But in Room database it's like reduced to 10 lines or 12 lines.
Wow.
So yeah, learning does make a difference. And that would move me to my next question. I don't have many left because you spoke so eloquently. So like how much financial backup one must have? Like, I don't want to get personal, just like give me a rough figure before, like, let's say 1 year plan that you want to get into programming. So how much like backup one should have?
I personally had about 3 to 4 months worth of our entire income saved up. We've been saving up for probably about a year and a half while we were both working. And we wanted to, we knew this was coming, but we didn't know exactly when, I was going to quit. And then circumstances arose and it's like, okay, now it's time to quit. So we had about 3 to 4 months worth of income. And then my wife continued to work all the way up until a little bit past when I got my job. So it was good to have that. That was quite necessary to have that, sitting on. But I would say it really depends on your situation. Some people are going to be, still staying with their parents, and they can get away with, $1,000, and they're good for a year and a half, and then other people, they're like, they have a house payment, they have a wife, they have children. It's going to be much harder in those situations unless you're, still working full time and, working nights and weekends only on tech. So it kind of depends. But if it's say a situation with you and your wife, I think it depends on how you budget, and how much you still have coming in. But I would say if you're willing to put in the time and the hard work for it, and keep your budget tight, you can do it with 3 to 4, maybe 5 months worth of income set aside, and then using that to fill in the gaps where you're still there, the income that's still coming in doesn't pick up all of the bills, that kind of thing.
Got it. Last question, coding related, and then I would just go for 2, 3 other questions.
Okay.
How did you keep up with the changes? Because this is why I told the big story. I forgot why did I tell the big story? But yeah, this is why I was telling because the technology had changed by the time I had finished learning. So this is what I wanted to ask, because your learning, obviously it's still ongoing, but it spanned around 9 months. So the technology, obviously it changed, or it might have changed. So how did you used to keep up with the changes?
Personally, I didn't keep up with it all that much. I tried to make sure that I was learning the fundamentals, and not the things that change. The first course I bought was from Udemy, and it was fundamental, entry level iOS development. It was a really good course, but it was actually 5 years old, and I didn't realize that at the time. And I think I paid $10 or $15 for it, so it wasn't the greatest loss. But I get about 20, 30 lessons in, and all of a sudden I'm copying line for line the code that they are writing. This lady is working with an internal database, I think, and it's not working. I'm having compiler errors, and I went back. It was such a difficult process because it's, sometimes you're following someone else's code, and that's a great way to learn. But when it doesn't do what it's doing for them, it's so easy to get discouraged and just, well, what am I doing wrong? And you start blaming yourself, and it's, you start going back and reading every single line and, pausing the video and comparing it. And it hurts so bad because it's just not working.
Oh, true, man.
So I had the same thing in a lesser version, and I ended up buying a more recent course from that lady that happened to pop up for sale as well for another $10 or $15. And that was newer, and I wasn't having the errors, so I was able to go a whole lot farther and actually complete that course.
Okay.
But as so. Yeah, it's really hard. You have to make sure you're not learning completely outdated material, but also try to not go for the newest, shiniest, fanciest parts of it. Like with Swift, there's UI Kit and there's Swift UI. UI Kit is the old style of designing an interface. And it's a whole lot more robust. There's so much more to it. You can customize things everywhere. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with it. Swift UI is what Swift is trying to go towards for designing your user interface. It's completely program written. There's a term for it. I forget. It's entirely code driven UI. Everything is in code. There is no storyboard. There's no drag and drop elements onto the screen and then constraints. There's none of that. You type all of it, and
Okay.
it's very powerful. But it's new. It's got major holes. It's getting better, but even Swift as a language is still like 5 or 6 years old. It's a very new language, so it's constantly changing. So I would say you have to make sure that you're not learning something that won't work. Um, don't try to pick up a 5-year-old course. Stick with something that's newer. Even if it costs a little bit more, it's going to be worth it to know what was working 2 years ago and learn that, because what's working right now won't run on old phones,
Yeah.
but what was working 2 years ago is going to work just fine today. So it's kind of finding that area. Don't learn something so old that it's not going to run, and don't learn something so new that nobody's going to be using it yet.
Wow.
I thought I was going to like Swift UI. I love the way it's written. But the company I'm working for doesn't use it anywhere. So they actually didn't want me using it in an app I'm working on, because nobody else in the company is going to know how to read it. They're going to have, if someone else goes to fix the app, say it needs an update or something, well, nobody else knows how to use it. So I shouldn't be using it either. So
Like,
that's,
go
yeah,
ahead. Okay.
that was it. Just
Okay,
don't go too
perfect.
far on it.
Yeah, okay, man. It's really insightful. I would just move towards your job related stuff now. So like how did you landed your job? Was there a test or like, yeah, are you learning on the
um,
job? Like if you could couple all these answers together.
sure. Uh, Getting this job was such a blessing from the Lord. I applied to probably 300 or 400 different jobs. And being entry level, it made it really difficult because everybody wants 3 to 5 years experience
Yeah.
and a bachelor's degree. I don't have a bachelor's degree. I have a high school education. I have 10 years of working in a completely different industry. Driving a truck does not give you experience in coding at all. So it was hard getting interviews. I probably only got probably 6 or 7 phone interviews, and only 3 or 4 that went on to like the coding test kind of thing. Honestly, I did awful at the coding tests. They would have glider tests. Have you seen those? It's a lot like those games on Leak Code. If you've messed with that, like coding problems on a very fundamental level. It's really weird stuff.
Really
Like
bookish.
very bookish. Yes, not very applicable. They do not do a good job from my experience at actually explaining or judging if someone knows how to code, because it's a whole bunch of really hard to understand concepts that you're just not going to use in an everyday job. So I probably got to those 2 or 3 times, and I failed miserably every single time. And the job that I did get, I didn't even apply to. It was all the Lord. The Lord really blessed in helping me get this job, because I had applied to a lot of places and nobody got back to me. And this job came from somebody messaging me. I believe it was on LinkedIn. Yeah, I think it was on LinkedIn. And this lady just reached out and said, "Hey, are you a Swift programmer? We're looking for a mobile developer." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I do Swift. I don't know any Android. Swift is all I know." And we went back and forth a little bit, and she actually kind of took my resume to the company, because she was being hired by the company to find people for the jobs. And I never applied to it personally. She just kind of carried my resume to them. and then came back and said, hey, they would like to interview you. And I had a video interview, basically just um, half like an HR interview, and half of it was more technical. They honestly just showed some like a simulator of an iPhone, with an app they had built, and asked me to describe what I was seeing, just to kind of, get an understanding as to whether I was actually a developer or someone just, playing along. And it's like, oh, okay, I see table views. I see, this is I can tell what's going on here. And they're like, okay, okay. And then, it went on to other interviews, but uh, thankfully there was no pointless coding interview where you had to write code about something that will never be
Multiple
done. Like how
choice
many?
question.
I'm sorry.
Multiple choice questions.
Yes. Multiple choice would be way better than those leak code questions and glider interviews.
Wow, amazing that. So are you presently learning on the job, or like you know enough that you are actually contributing to the company?
I am contributing. They initially, well, the first day I was hired, they asked me to learn a new language. They wanted me to learn C#, which is related to Objective-C, which is the foundation for Swift, or rather, Swift was created in a way that it looked similar to Objective-C, because that's what iPhones were using before Swift came along. So they wanted to make a language easy for the people doing Objective-C to learn. So I understood enough that it's like, okay, I can see what the language is trying to do, but the syntax was way different. Everything was different, but because I focused on learning the fundamentals of the language, and not trying to learn, the most far-reaching elements of Swift, the fundamentals of how the language worked carried over for most of it. And it took me about, I think about 2 weeks before I was writing code, and they had me learning SQL at the same time. So it was a little bit, I felt like I was back on my heels for about 2 weeks, just, well, honestly, a month. It felt like a month before I was really contributing to the team and being a part and being able to create stuff that they were able to use as well. But soon after that, I guess I did about 2 or 3 months with the C# APIs and SQL, and then they had started up a new project and needed me to work on an iOS app. And with that, I felt much more comfortable, just because I had done, I'd been doing 9 months of this, and now I get to do it. And it's like, okay, now I can make progress. It's like, yes, I can do stuff with C#. I can handle SQL a little bit, but really, Swift and iOS is what I know best. So
Wow.
I felt like I was really able to get into it. So they had me working on the UI first, and I worked on that for like 3 months, and I just finished it a couple of weeks ago for this app. And now it's like we have to work in the API data. We have to go in and create the MVVM architecture that's going to drive the UI. All that stuff is coming into it now, and it's slowing me down a little bit, because that's the more technical side.
Okay.
There's a whole lot more itty bitty moving parts. UI is a whole lot easier than API work, so it's taken a little bit of time, but they've done a good job of allowing me the room to grow into the position, and not expecting me to be a 20-year veteran from the start. So they've been really good to me.
Wow, that's great. Another question, like, do you use GitHub, and like, have you used, like, because obviously now you are working professionally, so like how much you know about GitHub, and like, are they using it like really extensively or something?
My company doesn't use GitHub. They use SourceTree and Bitbucket, which is very similar. It uses Git as its foundation, but it's just a different host for the same thing. Um, I'm I'm not the biggest fan of those. It feels better for me if I just, make something on my computer and ship it. That's easy, But when you're working with a team, you have to have systems in place to share code and have multiple people working on a project. You just have to. You can't have single person teams. So yes, we use that. It's they have a source tree is a visual UI for being able to use Git, which is really nice because you get to see the tree and the different parts of all the different branches of the Git tree, and you get to visually compare the code before you hit send and that kind of thing. So that's been a help, being able to have a visual UI, because there's a lot to Git. It's quite a tricky beast for
Wow.
sure.
Right.
I'm,
And
I'm I'm not a big fan of it, but it's good.
okay, so you're planning to learn Kotlin, right? So can you talk a little bit about that?
I don't know much Kotlin yet. I spent one day working on it, and then my boss shifted me back into another thing, and I haven't had a chance to go back. But I'm excited about it because I've heard it's actually easier than working with Swift and UIKit in areas. Like the UI is, I've heard it's pretty easy to work with. So I'm really excited to use it soon. We're working on an app that's going to be multi-platform. So as soon as the iOS app is done, if they don't have a guy full-time on the Android, it's probably going to be my job to learn Android and see if I can build it as well. So we'll see how that goes. I'm really excited to learn it because honestly, learning new languages can be very fun, but also you can learn deeper parts about coding and programming as a whole by picking up other languages and being able to see, oh, I see, they did this in Swift, but they do this in Kotlin. They're the same thing. And then you can tell how it works just based on that. So that kind of stuff has really helped me with understanding, classes and structs and, inheritance and that kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
learning new languages goes very far, at least for me, with understanding more about the core principles of coding.
Wow.
So it's not something that you should be scared of. If you can learn one language, you can probably shift to another one pretty quick.
Yeah. So like, have you like tried the Flutter, like, because they write code in Dart, and obviously you can create an app simultaneously for iOS and Android. And also with Dart is the, just like you were talking about Swift, that everything is like, even you have to create the view. So even
Mhm.
like when you're writing code in Dart, like you have to create that view and like, implement the logic simultaneously. Have you tried to venture into that?
No, I haven't. I thought of I kind of wanted to, just because it's I built a small app for iOS, and I was able to sell it for a little while. I haven't got any sales in a while, but that's how it works. I put it online, and I created a Facebook page for it. I told all my friends, like, hey, I've got this iOS app. You can go buy it right now. And about half of the people were like, oh, that's great. Is there an Android app? And I had to
Oh,
say,
oh,
nope, I don't know how to write an Android yet. That's a goal for one day, but no, I can't. I don't have that. And about half of the people asked me that. So it's like, ouch, okay, I need to learn something eventually, but I don't have it now. So when it came to working at this company I'm at, I wanted to be able to I wanted to be able to present myself as someone who can work, on multiple apps, multiple platforms, and I don't have that right now. But Flutter looks like a really cool way to do that. But my company isn't using Flutter; they were using just native Android,
mm,
just
yeah,
straight Kotlin, and going at it that way. And I honestly, Flutter looks like a really great way to have, matching UI on both sides and, have everything work the same. So you pick up one, you pick up the other, it's the same. That would be great, but no, I don't have any I don't have any practice in it yet.
I have like worked on Flutter for about like 4 to 5 months, and like I'm telling you, somebody like who has done Swift, like you can even pick up like Flutter in like 1 week. It's that easier. But
Huh.
obviously, yeah, this is a great way to go about things, that whatever the company is using, like we should focus on that. I think
Hmm.
like, yeah, my questions are like, like I have like asked all the questions that I wanted to, and obviously somewhere if somebody finds this interview, I hope it helps them. And like Michael, once again, like I'm really proud of you, man, and all the developer community, whoever comes across your journey, because obviously like we all have been there, like working and like sitting on our chair for 8 to 10 hours, and like then being stuck on a code for like 1 week, and then there
Mm.
is
Yep.
nobody. But like, and there is like way to go, Michael, like because this industry is changing, right? So I'm really looking forward to your journey, and I really appreciate your time and like sharing your journey with us. Okay.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see I'm excited to see what you've got coming too.
Okay, Michael, then like we'll keep in touch, and like guys, the
Absolutely.
Michael's Michael's Instagram is in the bio like of this video. And obviously if somebody has any questions, uh they can like directly go to Michael's Instagram and also follow his page, and also ask him questions. As you can see, he's very like kind and like helpful. So yeah, thank you, Michael, for your time, and I hope you have a good night.
Thanks for having me, and I hope you have a good morning.
Thank you.
Take
Bye
care,
bye,
Sam.
Michael.